sometimes it does feel like I'm like using people, using the system when I say God is real or I believe in God, because like I can't prove it. And my
Yeah.
whole life I've been like, if I can't prove it with scientific means of some sort, if I can't see it, sense it, then why would I say it's real?
I believe that the one of the biggest issues with right wing or conservative cultural stuff is religion. That it is baked in religion. That it is so closely tied to the dogma of religion. And so, for somebody like myself who grew up Catholic, confirmed in the Methodist Church, but then eventually became an atheist, it almost feels like you guys, not you specifically, but you guys, the conservative crowd, are saying I don't really belong because I don't believe in God. And instead, I would think that it would be better for all of us to really instead of worry about how did we come to the values that we agree on, just worry about the fact that we do indeed agree on the values. We care about community. We care about family. We care about merit and capitalism and things like that. And, when I called in, Tim was very quick to kind of shut it down and say, well, you need a mission and the right has God and the left has wokeness. But you seemed a little bit more open to it. So just let me throw it to you. And what do you think about all that?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is the behavior. Like who are you and what are you and how do you behave? That's my main thing. Because like if there is, I can't definitively say God is real. I don't know. I've been essentially agnostic my entire life, and it seems real when I look at the cosmic microwave background radiation, which is basically a scientific breakthrough with these radio telescopes. They look at this like it looks like a web of radiation left over after the Big Bang, and it's like it resembles like a neural net with like radiation arcing through planetoids and then like through these star systems, and like it looks kind of like energy going through neurons, like the neurons are the stars and things. And I'm really into fractals and like the philosophy of as above so below, and the deeper you look, the more like atoms look like stars. And like, so I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's real. And when I meditate, I'll communicate and I'll have responses, and it could just be my subconscious, but it could be more, and I'm open to it. And it sometimes it does feel like I'm like using people, using the system when I say God is real or I believe in God, because like I can't prove it. And my whole life I've been like, if I can't prove it with scientific means of some sort, if I can't see it, sense it, then why would I say it's real? But maybe then I could argue these days that maybe I do believe I'm sensing it.
And well, that's really I mean, you hit the nail on the head, is that, using the language, that's something that I focus on a lot, is that, if everybody is talking about God and calling their whatever belief it is God, then how can we scientifically get closer to that God if it is real? If it's not real, then then we don't need to worry about it. And again, we can go back to, okay, these are the values that will lead to a good community, good society, and all that. And so let's just focus on those. And if there is something out there that's bigger, that I completely agree with you. A lot of people, when they hear atheist, they think, oh, you must think that there's nothing and no, you don't believe in anything. It's like, no, I believe in love. I believe that there must be something bigger than just, our meat sacks walking around. I believe that there's some type of consciousness, but we can't study that when everybody's saying, well, yeah, it's God.
Yeah, skepticism is key. You've got to try and poke holes in your own theory. It's that's why I like be like, okay, it's there. Now everyone else follow me. It's like, nah, that's not good enough, man. I need more proof. I need hard proof. But also, I've been thinking lately that the scientific method isn't the only kind of science. Just because they call it the scientific method doesn't mean like that's what science is. It's just one way to view science, which is like have an idea and then try and break the idea. And if you can't replicate it, then it's not real. That's the scientific method. But sometimes it's like things just happen. Like they call them miracles in the Bible, but like because patterns are so great, if it happens 1 out of every 80 times, it doesn't mean that it's not real.
Yeah.
The scientific method will tell you that it's not calculably scientifically.
Absolutely. So how do you think that we can maybe shift the paradigm of getting closer to quote unquote God through that, whether it's the scientific method, or if it's just acknowledging a bunch of anomalies in energy or whatever it is? Again, we have to talk about it in this way because we don't necessarily understand what we're talking about. We all kind of feel like there's something there, but it seems like there's only, some people are willing to say, I know that it's this. And then there's other people who are willing to say, I don't know what it is. I think it's beautiful. I think it's amazing. I think it's, the most wonderful thing if we could understand it, but we don't. And that's okay.
One thing I like is something called ephaptic coupling. And maybe we could pull the definition of that at some point, and maybe put it up in the StreamYard. It's ephaptic coupling is when neurons in the brain communicate not through chemical reactions, which when people think of neurons communicating, it's like one lights up and then sparks the one next to it. That's the normal neural pathway. This is when neurons communicate through magnetic fields, local magnetic fields. So like one neuron in your brain will connect and activate another neuron far away non-chemically. And then hypothetically could one neuron in my brain could activate a neuron in your brain through and like what magnetic field? Is it the Earth's magnetic field? Is it the sun's magnetic field that we're communicating through? Is it the galactic magnetic field? And that maybe there are activations that can cause your neurons to manipulate without like that aren't human. Like there might be other ways to activate, and maybe like what is God even? Is it just a bunch of fields
Exactly
commingling? And but this stuff is like really, really fascinating that we can communicate across long distances through magnetic fields. That might be a step towards understanding what God is.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And no, I hadn't heard of that. And looking at the chart here, it looks, rather complex and definitely like something that, I could sink my teeth into. And it just feels like there's too many people, I'll use the Timcast Discord server just because that's probably the largest sample size that I have for this, of people who I share values as to what should we be doing. What should we be? How should we be moving forward? How should we be engaging with, the politics, the discussion, all of that stuff? What should we be doing? I find that most people that I agree there, but again, there's no interest in stuff like what you're talking about, and it's all the people who are like, oh, Ian rolling a one again. Oh, Ian, derailing the conversation, which really frustrates me because I mean, you clearly are not you and Tim are clearly two very different people. But that's an amazing thing. And I think what you bring to the show is so unique in and of itself. That it bothers me so much when people don't get it. It bothers me so much when people don't get it.
It's a Einstein, I think it's an Einstein quote. He's like, if you judge a fish's intelligence by its ability to climb a tree, everyone's going to think the fish is an idiot because that's not what it's built for. And it's kind of like me on a politics show. I enjoy politics. I like thinking about them and talking about them, but I don't study them every day. I'd rather think about science and communication and things like relationships and stuff like that. Those are my real passions.
Yeah.
So, but it's humbling and humiliating to be in a position where I'm not an expert or comfortable, but it's also like an opportunity to kind of bridge a gap between people that are really into like earthly politics and then people that are more into the stuff I'm into, which is like hard science and that kind of like pseudoscience and like just learning new things that you don't quite have the definitions for.
Right. Yeah. And I didn't even expect, I obviously everybody knows that you're, into graphene and stuff like that. But the depth that specifically, the James Tour presentation went in, I was like, oh, wow. Like, it's not just that he read about this and know, like he knows about this stuff. And so that when seeing you in a different light like that is and as the unwanted poet saying, I'm a fanboy a little bit, but it bears saying that the people, for anybody out there who's saying, oh, Ian needs to be off the show, like you don't understand that there is an entire swath of people who are not like us in watching Timcast videos every day and what's happening and in the culture war and wanting to fight about and that's a good thing. If everybody was like us, we'd probably all be annoying. We want more people who are out there just living life, getting involved in acting, in music, in science, and all that kind of stuff. And so I just wanted to say that is one thing that people definitely do not give you enough credit for.
I think that like me being on IRL with Tim is kind of like a microcosm of the culture war because he and I come at the same thing from different angles. And then you'll see, like, are we going to fight and I'm going to be like, fuck you and walk away? Or are we going to overcome our emotions and allow each other to or allow ourselves to disagree and still focus on the main topic, which is basically what we've been able to do for 3.5 years or however long we've been doing it.
Yeah. And I think it works well. So I want to dive back into, what you were talking about, how, the scientific method may not be the only way to address to address this, because you said something similar with Dr. James Tour about science being the wrong framing when we're talking about religion. So you brought up the Ephaptic coupling thing. If you could bring it down to, dumb it down a little bit, what would be a different way to approach getting closer to God in a different context than the scientific method as we understand it?
Well, it's they say it's personal. Your relationship with God is personal only because like the way I experience it might not be the way others do. But what I started doing was meditating. I started in 2006 making YouTube videos because I was like, well, Jesus is pretty cool. And maybe what would he do if he was here right now? He'd probably use make internet videos and tell people. So I was like, let's do that. Let's try and like spread the goodness. So I'll do that. And then I started reading this book called The Four Agreements. It's this book of Toltec wisdom by these ancient Toltecs. They predated the Aztecs, and they were like the wise men of the culture. And they were like, they boiled things down to these 4 agreements that if you live by, it greatly enhances your life and the life of others around you. It's like, always do your best, only do and say what you mean, don't take anything personally, and don't make assumptions. And so I was like, okay, let's do this. Let's not only tell people about it, but let's start to live like that. So I started doing like, basically I started being honest, and I had to learn the hard way that honesty doesn't mean you say everything you're thinking. There's a time and a place to say what you're thinking. Sometimes you can say nothing and you're still being honest. It's like discretion. So honesty and discretion are very important. But at the time I didn't have that. I was just an open fire hose of truth, of honest, of everything I thought. And my justification was, well, it's true, so I have to say it. And I was alienating people, and people were like, dude, shut the fuck. People didn't want to confide in me anymore. But at the same time, I told all the things that come into my mind. Something would come into my mind from my past. I make an internet video about it and humiliate myself and tell people, and then it would no longer bother me. And so I started to gain clarity of thought. Like, I would no longer have these thoughts that would pop into my head because I had already told everybody about them. They were gone. They were out there now. They weren't in here. And then I started to be able to control my thoughts and think long strains of sentences, communicate like, you're doing very well. I would think it and then say it. And then I realized I could think it to myself and it would respond. And then I was like, oh, and then after the years, I was like, maybe that's communicating with like the Schumann resonance of consciousness, or the greater galactic scope. And maybe that's what God is. And that's kind of how I started to experience it, was the response that I would get in my own head. It was, for a long time, I just called it my subconscious. But now I'm like, well, maybe there's more than just me involved in this. I mean, obviously these fields that we're within are greater than Ian body.
So, but let's dig into that. So even if it is just your subconscious, and let's say that, you have a subconscious and other people have a subconscious, and then, we go back to the Ephaptic coupling, and that subconsciousness could be connected in some way that, we don't completely understand. Where is so obviously I understand your answer to the original question being that, just exploring different different individual experiences and learning about those experiences. But to take it a step further, then I still don't see where the dogmatic belief of this is a God has to come from. And I just believe that, using the word God always muddies the water, because nobody knows what God is. You know what I mean? It's like, how are we better going to define this thing by using words that we already don't know how to define?
Yeah, that I think comes from the ancient texts where they're like, well, we've come as far as we can with our technology. Let's just call it something and just kind of rely on that. But also, I think it was used as a control mechanism. Like, literally, some guy would roll into town, kill everybody in the village except for like the women, the children, or some of the subservient men, kill them all, burn all their texts, all their history, and then say, I'm God now. Worship me. Everything comes from me. Nothing was before this. And then you teach the kids that. They don't know any better. And then they're like, okay. And then they write it down. Before God, there was nothing. Then God gave us light. Like, he came in with electricity from ancient Atlantis tech. And then that happened over and over. And then some new warlord would come in, kill that guy and all his followers, and be like, I'm God now. And then you have different gods and different texts. And like, it's so easy to just call yourself God if people don't have any reference. And I think that for sure that word has been severely abused over time. There's so much more going on than 3 letters can explain. We've got to figure it out. That's why I'm fascinated with science.
Yeah, and I completely agree. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed that clip, check out the full live stream link in the bio and catch me live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern. See you there.